everybody. Welcome back to Are You Aware? Recovery isn't linear, it is unique to the individual, and that's what we're going to talk about today. Hi, ladies.
Hi there.
Hi.
How's it going?
It's going well.
It's good. Yep.
Mhm.
Great week.
Good to see you.
Good, you too.
Day 2 at the gym.
Yay.
Wow, bring it.
Hey. Good.
Wellness for all.
Absolutely. That's awesome. Nice. Well, do we want to start with our aware highlight today? I'm kind of excited about who we're talking about.
Yes. So, so one of my favorite curriculums and people of all time. The curriculum's name is Intentional Peer Support. It's an organization that created this social change relationship model curriculum. It's so amazing. Chris Hansen and Sherry Mead are a beautiful married couple, and Sherry Mead created this curriculum back in, I believe, the early 80s. And she brings such a beautiful way of really rethinking how we are with the people that we're interacting with. Primarily, it was written specifically for people with mental health recovery. And Sherry Mead's story, you can look it up. It's phenomenal. She's someone with advanced degrees and also has been somebody who's accessed the mental health system and was marginalized and oppressed within that system. And so over the years, she was able to really kind of like dissect where the gaps were and how we have, this dominant medical model power over type of system. And so she started putting together a curriculum specifically for people with lived experience of mental health, supporting others with mental health during their experiences. And it's gone wild. It is trained in about 12 countries, and not just individuals with lived experience are receiving this training. It's there's social workers, there's psychiatrists, case managers, corrections, law enforcement, and beyond, and it's pretty amazing. So anyway, we chose Chris and Sherry specifically because they're doing amazing work around the world and really redefining and reshaping how our system can look. Because it's not just the what and the why, it's the how to be with people in a different way. And it requires deep self-reflection. And so when we're talking about recovery isn't linear, being in Oregon the last 14 years, I've been training intentional peer support, and it makes all the difference in the world on how we can be with people along their journey rather than pushing them with our agenda or dragging them along. We're really able to kind of look deeply within our own bias and our own assumptions and in the way we get in the way of people's journey. And so it fits really well with what we're talking about today. So I'm pretty excited. So shout out Chris
To
and
Intentional
Sherry,
Peer Support.
Intentional Peer Support.
Yay.
Yeah, no, I was really excited to hear that we were going to do intentional peer support today because Angel and I just trained it last week. And so we just wrapped up this like beautiful week of training. Literally, people were like crying and hugging and didn't want to leave each other, which was just such an awesome thing. And I really feel like this training cultivates that. It cultivates this connection, not only a connection with the people in the group and with us, but connection with themselves and what's going on inside of them, which we're all about, at Aware. So yeah, I was excited to talk about intentional peer support and Chris and Sherry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Awesome. It certainly has. Having intentional peers and working with intentional peers, which is how you and I met, Fawn,
totally.
has certainly changed the way that I work. It has changed my experience working with other people. And it really, the take home point is that it's about the relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all about the relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the
absolutely.
great things about this is people come into this training thinking they're going to learn what to do with these peers or what to do with the people they're serving. And when they leave after 5 days, 40 hours is a long time. When they leave, they go, oh my God, I can see my part. And I can't even believe why don't I know this? Why isn't this
Mhm.
taught in our education system?
Mhm.
Why
Totally.
isn't this given to family members struggling or couples
Yes.
or, and beyond? It's pretty amazing. It's changed my relationship with my family like tremendously over the last 14 years. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Me too. Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, kudos to Sherry and Chris
Yes.
for making
Keep
an
up the good
awesome
work.
program.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, very important work.
Absolutely. Well, and it
Mhm.
just so happens that today is Martin Luther King Jr.'s pause. Remembrance.
Yes.
And so we wanted to kind of, just say a couple of things to really get us in a place where we realize that Dr. King was an amazing person, and everything that he fought for and everything that he went through to continue to strive for more love in our world. And I'm pausing, guys. I'm having a hard time with that.
That's
We're
okay.
going to cut all this out.
All right, that's okay. I would maybe, can I just make a
Yeah,
comment?
I was going to say, can we just cut that and you start it?
Okay.
Because I'm struggling with it.
All right. I would say, well, since today is the remembrance of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s life and contribution, I thought it might be nice to reflect and connect with some of his words and think about how they change the work that we're doing.
Mhm.
I think we've just agreed that the relationship is critical, the relationship and how we engage with one another, particularly when we have somebody who is coming to us from a place of suffering.
Yeah.
And we like to use that language of meeting people where they are, which
Absolutely.
is so important to facilitate that feeling of trust and safety and a connection
Totally.
to begin moving things forward. But I think it's difficult to establish that sense of belonging sometimes when there is such suffering on the other side. And I think Dr. King recognized that. And a lot of his work was about love. And again, that theme of love being an action word, not a feeling, or not just a feeling. So one of the quotes that I thought would speak nicely to the work we're doing is something from Dr. King in 1956 when he was speaking in Montgomery, Alabama. And he said that we have before us the glorious opportunity to inject a new dimension of love into the veins of our civilization.
That's amazing. I love it.
So it makes me think about the work that we're trying to do, making connections and establishing trust and bringing people into a space where they feel safe, and just how we do that, and that it looks different for everybody. It looks different for everybody. Something else that I think about a lot is that a lot of the decisions that we make and choices that we make when we're working in institutions and systems that are in place, they tend to be driven by fear. There is a lot of fear. And it makes me think of the work that you all are doing in intentional peer support that speaks directly to that idea of not acting out of fear. But also, an important point that you make, Angel, is that we don't just want to dismiss the fear.
Right.
Yes. Can you speak more about that?
Yeah, definitely. Well, this we can talk a little bit about the 4 P's of fear, and this comes directly out of intentional peer support curriculum. So when we think about fear, we don't want to negate fear. It's not that fear isn't present, but what we're doing in society or in our systems or even in our households with our families is we react out of fear rather than honor that it's present and find a way to move through it. And when we do that, so if we're trying to move through fear, we want to honor that it's there. So what happens is we get to a place of reacting out of fear with the 4 P's. And so the 4 P's are we are predicting an outcome. So when we predict predicting. I have dyslexia, just roll with it. Okay. Predicting. Yeah, that's what that word says right there. And so when we're afraid, we all know about fight, flight, freeze, fawn, or faint. And when our lid is flipped, or when we're activated by fear, we predict something's going to happen. Whether someone says they're going to get loaded, or someone says that they're not going to do one type of recovery that is the dominant culture. For example, we might say 12 step. If someone says, I don't want to go to 12 step because I want to smoke pot as well, but methamphetamines or something else was my drug of choice. And then people get really afraid. Oh, they're predicting that they're not going to get into recovery, that they're not going to have quality of life. They're not going to have, they're going to go back to using meth, which now I'm not saying go out and do these things. What I'm saying is recognize within us when we're afraid, what is our natural pattern? We predict a terrible outcome of something, and that comes from within us. And maybe it comes from somebody else's, their experience, and it happened last time. And then we're driving that it happened last time, so it's going to happen again today, right? Or this time. So we got to be aware when we're predicting. And then what happens if we're, this was terrible. So if we're predicting, what we start to do, the next kind of process is prying. So we predict something bad's going to happen. We're seeing it happening. Now we start to pry. We start to pry into their lives, or pry with a lot of questions, or even sounding shaming or blaming or uncertain, like, oh, cautioning, you don't want to do that. We start prying. And then when we go to the next phase, we start to prescribe. And that prescribe does not necessarily mean prescribe a medication. What this means is, oh, go talk to your sponsor before you do that. Go talk to your doctor before you decide to get off your meds. Oh, you better get home. My kid's out in the middle of nowhere, out running amok on the street. You need to get home now, and get home now, or there's going to be severe consequences. You can't tell a teenager that. You cannot tell a teenager that when they're already off on doing their own thing.
And nobody likes to be shit on.
And nobody wants to be shit on, right? And so I'm predicting something's going to happen. Now I'm prying, and now I'm prescribing what I think, based off of my prediction, you need to be doing. And what that does is it creates a power over. People don't want you to take their power. They don't want you to tell them what they can and cannot do. How about we shut up and listen? Mm-hmm. So, and try to seek to understand, like, what's bringing them to what they just said that led us to fear in the first place. Honor that we're afraid, but not say that they have to do anything different, just to move through it. So if we're in the 4 P's of fear here, then what comes next? Well, this is reactive pattern. How do we learn to respond with hope and possibilities? So if we're going to do something different, we need to practice and learn to respond rather than react. Reacting is a pattern. Responding is freedom. And so when we think about possibilities, maybe it's validating. Wow, it sounds like you've put a lot of thought into this. Wow, it sounds like, that doesn't work. Can I tell you that when you say you wanted X, I'm a little afraid, but I'd be lying if I didn't say that. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean you need to do anything different. Like verbalizing that to somebody, remaining connected so that people trust you and deepen that connection and build that relationship while walking alongside somebody in their journey doesn't necessarily mean we don't have fear, because it's going to evoke a lot of fear. If we're in our system, we're going to have a lot of fear because of the way the system's built. If we're in a role that's mandatory reporter, we're going to have fear. All of those things are driving our pathways to people having other possibilities of their recovery journey. It's not linear. Yeah. Allow them to make their choices, even if they hit a wall. What a beautiful opportunity, right?
Yeah.
Didn't we all hit a wall? Don't we all hit walls?
opportunity.
Absolutely.
So exploring other possibilities on how to be with people.
Yeah. Well, and I think that this is the main reason, right, that the system is the way it is, right? Because like last week, we talked about people are dying.
Yeah.
It's real,
Mhm.
so I understand why these systems are put in place because they are trying to save lives. But what they don't realize that they're doing is they're actually creating opposition to where people don't get to make their own decisions and they don't come to their own outcomes and their own discontent and their own motivation to be able to do these things. And so that you get people that are stuck in this wheel of like, gotta go do this thing because my therapist said, or because my recovery mentor said,
Or my PO.
or my PO, totally. And then falling down over and over and over again instead of actually finding that groove and navigating what their own unique pathway looks like into recovery.
And it's not to say that those certain things have helped some people. What we are saying, because I know that that's one of the biggest arguments I get, or people come back with me, well, Angel, but that worked for me. Yeah, and it doesn't work for a whole lot of people.
Yep.
And so how do we honor this might work for one and create other pathways, or at least walk alongside other individuals on other pathways without judgment? That's
Totally.
the key.
I think that is the key. Yeah. And we talk about data a lot when we're working in medicine. And I think something that we come to recognize in the world of behavioral health is that often it's an N of one, because something that's working for one individual isn't necessarily going to be the thing that's going to help another person be successful. And we see that over and over again. Everybody's story is different.
Yeah.
Everybody's needs are different. Everybody's values are different. What means quality of life to one individual may not mean quality of life to another individual. And so, just like you said, recognizing that those challenges, that what is suggested by the latest evidence may actually not be what an individual needs.
Yeah.
And we're better at that, I think, in the world of medicine. We're better at that with some members of the community than we are with others. But we do have a lot of fear around issues with mental wellness and substance use.
You said mental wellness. I love it. It just made my heart melt.
So well, that's where we're headed.
I just love that.
Yeah. And it makes people afraid. And again, some of that makes sense because the risk is high. The mortality is high with some of these social problems. That language probably isn't great. Social
barriers.
problems.
Well,
social barriers, maybe. Well, if you think about it, what is the person gets to define what the problem is, right? And our system and society uses language calling certain things a problem,
right?
When
Which
really
itself is a social construct.
Yes,
we've made that up.
Right,
we've made that up, and now you just have to fit within that box, or or it's a problem, and we're afraid of you.
We're focusing on so many fucking problems, we can't even get to any solutions because nobody can create anything new, right? Oh, I just said the F word. Just bring it. It's frustrating though, and we're focusing on problems. Right? Like it's like you're dragging around a suitcase of a bunch of problems. Well, I don't want this. I don't want that. I don't want that. How about you put the suitcase down and you start creating what you do want? That's another thing in IPS, right? Intentional peer support. It's like moving towards and creating what you want rather than focusing on what you don't want.
Right.
Yeah.
Challenging though, because as we were saying earlier, it's just there are so many barriers to getting resources. Oftentimes, if you're not willing to do things a certain way, then you won't have access to anything. Whether it's housing or medication.
Well, and how often do we hear things, like, oh, maybe they're just not ready yet.
Yeah.
Maybe they haven't hit bottom yet.
Oh boy.
And it's just like, it's unfortunate because there are so many people out there who are asking for help, but they don't know what help looks like. And this system is prescribing them help that isn't working.
Well, and it's got strings attached, right?
That's the prescription.
You do it
our way.
Yes,
or no
exactly.
Way, right?
Yeah. Or you won't ever be successful. Yeah. There's nothing we can do. Sorry.
Yeah.
You're not ready.
Right. Even in like the 12 steps really saved my life in a lot of ways because I didn't know how to build community. It was an amazing support. And then it started to get to a point where, there was a lot of judgment I was hearing. Just, it was like, you throw a bunch of people in there with a bunch of, I don't even know how to say it without just saying a lot of toxic stuff that they bring into the rooms,
Yeah.
right? With well intention of
Yeah.
healing, but there's not a lot of healing that goes on in the rooms. A lot of processing happens. And then what happens is then they start creating these little circles of friendships, which is awesome. It's part of the social determinants of health, right? But if these groups of friendships aren't continuing to
Inclusive.
go inward and
Mhm.
not and check themselves when they're judging somebody else's journey and
Mhm.
deflecting their stuff into, oh, that's not recovery, this and that, that's when it becomes where people are dying because they're
Yeah.
walking away from rooms. I've seen in 25 years, I've seen so many people walk away from rooms because of the judgment they
Me
felt and the
too.
shame they felt. And that's not what Bill W. and whomever
Yeah.
said that was supposed to be. It's supposed to be a guide, not a
Mhm.
Bible,
Yeah.
right? Anyway.
Right. Well, and I think it's hard too because it's like, you get in recovery, you're proud of yourself, you feel good, you do things, like go to speaker meetings and, you're becoming this productive person, in this community. And I hate to say it, but I think some of it becomes ego. It's like,
Mhm.
well, I haven't used in this long, and I do this and I go to this many meetings and I chair,
Mhm.
and some of these kind of things. And it's like any other social construct, right? That
Right.
there's a certain amount of ego in there that unfortunately burns what was good to begin with.
Yes.
If these rooms aren't inclusive and everybody's not accepted and people feel like they don't belong, then what's the point? Because
Mhm.
like you said, Angel, that's not the way it was created. And I
Right.
do
Yeah.
think 12 step has some amazing
Oh my
principles,
gosh.
and a lot of people love it. And also a lot of people have said that it put something in them that gave them a distaste, and so they
Mhm.
had to go find something else. And unfortunately, a lot of those things are not as well known, like harm reduction
Mhm.
and other spiritual
Mhm.
ways. And so you narrow into this, well, this is the only box and
Yeah.
I don't fit in that box anymore, so I guess I'm just SOL. And that's not the case because there are
Mhm.
lots of options out there. And when you're doing individualized care, I mean, you could be incorporating all of these amazing things, and then that, beautiful life
Mhm.
is more obtainable and, easier.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
And can you speak a little bit more to the role of peer supports in that work of recovery and what that
Yeah.
might look like?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so I love peer support because, it's just how do you navigate a system that, like, we've been working in this system a long time and I have a hard time navigating it sometimes, whether it's your insurance or whether it's, calling and, getting deadlines and, people on the other end, who, just don't vibe with you. I had a really unfortunate situation where somebody was going to do an assessment and I spent 2 hours on the phone with this person who has severe trauma, and all the questions that were coming at her were traumatic as hell for 2 solid hours. And so I was so glad that I was on that other side to like rub her back and be like, hey, you don't have to answer that question if you don't want to, because nobody tells you those
Right.
things,
Mhm.
in this process. So you traumatize yourself, they traumatize you. It's re traumatization in our system.
Mhm.
And, having a person who's been through some of it, even because we've all got different experiences, if somebody comes to me and says they've been hospitalized for their mental health, I can still support them, even though I haven't been hospitalized for my mental health, because
Mhm.
I at least know what it's like to have my power stripped away from me. I know what it's like to struggle with, my mental health, period. And so giving people an extra person who understands, who's been there, who's no judgment, who can help you wade through those things. Sometimes you just need somebody to help you fill out a form because you pick up that packet and it's like 8 pages and you're overwhelmed and you're like, okay, maybe I will leave and go smoke a cigarette and think about coming back.
Mhm.
And you never come back,
Right.
so it's so nice because I don't know, it's a friend,
Yeah.
they say in peer support that we shouldn't say we're their friends because we're hired support. But the plain and simple fact of the matter is, it's a friend who's got lived experience of some of the things. They at least understand, in some regard, what you're going through, and they can help you navigate this really, really tough system. Unfortunately, there's not all great peers, just to be blunt.
Well,
You know, there's
Well,
great
they've been
peers
taught by the system to be,
and there's peers who've been taught wrong,
yeah.
basically.
Well, I mean, that's
and that's unfortunate.
and it's like that wherever you go.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
Yeah.
yes. Well, you guys are exceptional.
We
well,
love
there's
you
a
for
lot
that.
of really exceptional people out
Totally.
there doing this work, and then there's a lot of people who are exceptional but have been trained to be coercive,
Yep.
punitive,
Well,
and basically co-opted
yes,
into
just
becoming
the
more
same
of the
in my
same.
the
I
same
was
in
gonna
my
say.
business.
Yeah.
Yes, there are people who get it, and there are people who don't quite
Yeah.
get it yet. You know, and
Yeah.
unfortunately, it's really it's problematic because lives are on the line.
Yeah.
Lives are on the line, and we need to do everything we can, I think, to reach out to those people who are struggling,
Yeah.
people who are suffering, coming to us sometimes from a place of just unbelievable trauma,
Yeah.
that they've never been able to talk about those experiences.
Well, in some circles, they're that trauma's separate from addiction.
Yeah.
Or
They're told not to talk
they're not
about it,
told
that it's
to-
not their area.
Yeah, that's not my area. You got to go see. No, actually, we all are touched by trauma, and anyone who's experienced the need, excessive need, or addiction for any substance or any behavior that could really, diminish their quality of life, is likely to have a significant amount of trauma. And Dr. Gabor Mate talks about that. And so if you don't know about him, find him on YouTube because he's amazing. And then in Portugal, they even did that study for their opiate use went down by 50% in 15 years because they changed their model. They used to replicate the United States model. And what's his name? Johan Hari does a TED talk on it, and it's called "Everything You Think About Addiction Is Wrong."
Yep.
And that was on point because we are such a punitive system. And so back to what, if I could, unless you got something to say.
Totally.
You said something about, we're frowned on by using language, specifically around friendships. Actually, what a beautiful opportunity, because if we're coming from a grassroots kind of way of being in peer support or mentorship, we develop what resembles like a friendship, though we have tools to navigate the system, right? And when we're told not to use that language, we may not be using it. The people we're working with are using it with us. And so what a beautiful opportunity to have a conversation about, what does a friendship look like to you? Instead of shutting it out, we're not friends, I'm your mentor because I'm in this power dynamic, I'm this expert because I've been there and I got this years under my belt, or whatever the fuck it is. What we're doing is we're disconnecting and we're shutting them off, and we're removing any real opportunity to explore that language and meaning and what's beneath that word, and then modeling how or not modeling, because I don't like that. That's almost saying that I have the model, right? But really having conversations that really talk about how I've learned to develop friendships. How have you learned? What are all your friendships look like? And then we go back to possibilities when we're thinking about this here. If all my conversation and who I've become is this identity, whether it's mental illness or addiction, or and then the bitty little tiny space is me, right? This is kind of how it is right now. I mean, talking to your dentist about addiction, right? And your recovery, because that's the only time you really feel good about yourself, when you're feeling low or small, right? You kind of default to all of your conversations, all of your walks of life, all of the things you're doing revolve around this. And it took me a long time to realize I was stuck here, and people were coming to me, "Hi, Angel, thank you for your talk. I'm so-and-so and I'm schizophrenic." Well, that's the same mindset. And I'm like, oh, so you're a person first, right? I don't say that out loud, but I think about it. And so I'll reframe, like, oh, so you say you're a person who's been diagnosed with, or you're a person who's struggled with substance use. But how about we also talk about this not being linear?
Yeah.
what other things? We've got spirituality, we've got wellness of from substance use or whatever it is. We're a mom. We have community. We have friendships. We're employed or employer, etc. And still really like honoring the whole person and really helping them explore all of who they are and what they want in life and move towards. And that might be harm reduction, right? This may not be one type of model. This might be, oh, today I don't want to drink a fifth of vodka, but I can smoke a joint, right?
Right.
Oh my gosh, yay, because that's not killing your liver and it's not killing your mind, or where you can't even remember anything, right? So whatever, just honor the pathway, get out of this, or at least acknowledge when we or when others are stuck here, how can we open up this this way of being in the world? Like, I don't know the data. I wish I could say the data, but I don't know the data on but I do know that a lot of times people 13 years and above are still here. And then they end up using because they're like, oh, they quit going to meetings or they quit doing this program. And then actually, I think that they just were stuck and they were seeking something else. And that's okay. So walk alongside them that journey so they feel safe and not shamed.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, and I think there's a time and a place
Love
for
it.
all of it,
Love
right?
it.
Like you were saying, like when I was newly in recovery, when I was newly working in recovery fields too, I did everything recovery. I went to all the walks, all the hands across the bridges, I wore all the t-shirts. Like I was enmeshed, right? And it was good for a little while to be in enmeshed, to feel like I belonged. I was a part of something, this community. And then a few years ago, I was working with someone who basically, I had said, hey, you're going to go to that walk, the NAMI walk this weekend. And she goes, no, I'm probably not going to go. And I would go, oh man, you should go. It's going to be great. Trying to encourage her. And she goes, you know what, Fawn? She's like, I've been in recovery a long time. She goes, I just want to, I don't want you to take this wrong. She's like, but not every single thing you do has to be recovery related. And I was kind of like, oh, what do you mean? Like, we work in recovery. We go to everything. But it did change my mind to where it was like, you know what? Because the truth was, I really didn't want to go that weekend. I was so tired and, I wanted to stay home with the kids and hang out, but I had so many people being like, you're going to go, right? And so I did decide not to go and I felt so guilty, but I laid in a bed with my babies and cooked food and, hung out. And it was nice,
That
and so
helps your wellness, right?
It helps my wellness. And that is where I have tried to push myself to, is like encompassing my spirituality more, encompassing all these different things so that I feel like a whole person. So I'm not just that linear mindset of like, this is all I do and this is the places I go and these are the people that I talk to. Instead I'm the one out there like, hey, how's it going? What's your name? Nice to meet you. Because I'm trying to expose myself to more stuff all the time. And I feel good about it. I feel good about my life right now. So
yes, that's awesome. And I do love this aspect of the whole person. And that sketch there reflects
that scribble there.
that everybody, that everybody needs something different.
Yeah.
And it brings me back to the role of the peer in helping people find those resources.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot about our institutional healthcare system that requires somebody to be a diagnosis. And so there's it sometimes it's difficult to get out of that space, and there's even some fear on the part of the person that they might not have access to the care that they need if they are well.
Well, that's absolutely a big thing. People get into this place of learned helplessness, right? And they get stuck, because here, if they don't follow this kind of this pathway or this then they might lose their housing, they might lose their social security, they might lose their counselor, they might lose their friendships, they might, there's so many people that just kind of just sit there and become complacent
Yeah.
because they don't know what else to do.
Yeah.
And we're teaching people to go into the hospitals
Yep.
in big crisis that could really be um, an experience and an opportunity to grow through something. We're teaching them to go in the hospital. We're teaching them to get food there. We're teaching them to get drugs there and sleep there, right? And that's a big deal.
Yeah.
We're
Well,
teaching
and a
it.
lot of times just to have somebody to communicate with.
Yeah, connection.
You know, when I was working at the hospital, I can't tell you how many people came in and, you know, you'd end up finding out it was something minor and they'd been there for like 4 hours, but they talked to this nurse and that was their favorite doctor. And, you know, they were
Those
using
are
it as community. It was
relationships.
relationships. Yeah.
Yeah. I had a great relationship with my provider, you know, before she retired, and 20 years with the same primary care physician, you know, it was amazing. So now I'm lost, you know, it's been 6 years, nearly 6 years. And I'm like, I can't even find a primary care physician that I feel like I can trust, because they want to go like looking through all kinds of electronic records that have nothing to do with me today. But then they create this
Facts.
judgment. You know, I'm not addicted to drugs today. I was for many years as a young person. I'm not drinking and using all kinds of substances.
But before you meet them, they've already read
already
your
read my
chart.
chart.
They've read your
Yeah.
chart.
Oh, she's in recovery. Therefore,
So they've
Mhm.
got the note typed up as you're walking in the door.
Yeah. Serious.
Right. It's serious. I've had a few. I'm like, you suck.
Right.
I'm out. Right. Like,
So,
yeah.
well, luckily, at Aware Consulting, we're trying to change all of that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Solutions.
Yes,
Yep.
exactly. Solutions, opportunities, opportunities for growth and change.
Yep.
And it just makes me so excited
Me too.
about the possibility of working in a system that is about supporting the individual, you know, and that can taper its treatments to that individual's desires, because we know that changes the probability of success.
Yeah.
Yes. So
yeah, well, and allowing, you know, if we can get Medicaid and these insurance companies to pay for things that aren't just the medical model
Agreed.
dominant,
the
like,
service.
Agreed.
oh my gosh, the service. Like, what about Reiki? What about yoga? What about I mean, I know there's some health codes, so we're not going to say that there aren't, but you know,
They
what's the
cover
reimbursement
acupuncture
rate?
now.
Right? What's the reimbursement rate
They're
on
getting
those?
there.
Right? They got to make it to where these organizations or these, you know, practitioners can afford to actually provide these supports to everyone, not just, you know, those who have a higher economic scale of, you know, an out-of-pocket expense. So
Yeah. Well, I met somebody today, somebody who was looking for private peer support, and I had like a really good conversation with him. And he was actually saying that he had been to detox, you know, several times. He has Medicaid, but apparently he worked a job for a really long time that had really good benefits. And so he had experienced really good treatment centers that have Reiki and yoga and all of these things. Yeah. And so, you know, that was one of the things that he said is like, you know, can you help me get into somewhere? He said, I'll pay it out of pocket if I have to. He said, because the treatment centers that I've gone to in the past that Medicaid covered weren't doing it great, you know, which it sucks because
it's a two-tier
everybody
system.
deserves it, you know?
I know people who never walked into a treatment center and never walked into a like a 12-step room after their first experience. But what they did find was wellness in a community of people in the gym and maybe at a class. Me, I want to dance, like get me out there, let me move, you know, or but there's people out there that just like completely changed their lives through a different type of community. And so how do we like start building knowledge around it's okay to find community in X, right? There's no shame. There's no shame. So that solution could be part of that, right? Like as we're at Aware, doing wellness initiatives with companies and getting strategically kind of excited and broadening our perspective and the things that we bring to the table when they say, well, what do you think? when they're creating these ideas at these tables that are creating more of the same, I'm just like, yeah, no, how about we stop talking about more of the same? You're just changing the language. Let's
Mhm.
really think outside the box, and then just naming it so people in our audience could be literally thinking out of the box, like really thinking out of the box, and start pushing that on committees, at legislation,
Yeah.
at their own
Asking for
organizations.
change. Yeah.
Mhm.
Lobbying for change.
Yeah.
And getting the information out there.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and that's one of the reasons I love, our push for trauma awareness because, we have so many organizations right now that are asking us for help, embedding trauma awareness into their policies and procedures,
Mhm.
into their processes, into their groups,
Mhm.
building groups that are trauma aware so that people will show up for
Yeah.
the group.
Yes.
Mhm. Right. Right.
So it makes me happy and excited and
Mhm.
proud,
Mhm.
just of all the things that we're doing revolving around trauma awareness
Mhm.
and mental wellness across the board,
Mhm.
anywhere,
Yeah.
schools,
Yeah.
you know.
Schools, institutions,
Mhm.
healthcare, not just healthcare. Yeah.
Family units, if you think about families that might have individuals in their household that are struggling with X, or maybe they have developmental, differences,
Mhm.
and they're burning out because there's no respite for them, or there's
Mhm.
no place to get added support, and so you run on this autopilot and that comes out your neck sideways. No wonder
Mhm.
people are like filtering through like the emergency rooms because there's nowhere for people to go.
Yeah.
So how do we educate
Mhm.
and policy
Mhm.
and get dynamic and creative?
Yeah. About
So
how we rapidly,
radiantly
radiantly reform
reform.
our systems.
That's the
Yes.
triple R's,
Right.
suckers. Rapid radiant reform, bitches.
What's really exciting is whoa. Look, 2 days at the gym is just
I
that's
know.
it.
You're at your limit.
You're done. You're done. That's it. Sit.
I have energy today. I love you.
So I do
Hilarious.
love that idea of getting the information out there. I mean, I think this I mean, there are people around the world that are leading this charge and starting
Yeah.
to start or have been talking for some time now about how the trauma experience is prevalent and changes our brain.
Oh,
It
totally.
changes our brain in a way that needs to be addressed.
Mhm.
And it's something that we need to talk about and talk about openly. And we need to
Mhm.
talk about the way it affects our health and our
Mhm.
mental wellness
Mhm.
and our susceptibility to substance use
Mhm.
and to dysfunction in the community and in family
Mhm.
life.
Mhm.
So, yes, it's really quite exciting to think about how we can reallocate all of the resources
Thank you.
that are
Reallocate.
going into delivering this care in
Mhm.
a system that's essentially broken,
Yeah.
into a, with respect to healthcare, a corporate healthcare system
Mhm.
that is driven by not necessarily what works, but
What
by,
pays?
what pays.
Yeah.
Yeah, what pays. Yeah, so
The 9
the
years that
time
I
has
was at
come.
Warmline,
Mm-hmm.
that's another awesome program and resource.
Mhm.
By the way, David Romper, Oregon Warmline, with Community Counseling Solutions. And the 9 years that I was there, what we did early on was put together a list of a few questions that would talk about, like, if you would have had the warm line, would you have access to more costly service? And I'm really heavy on, like, let's look at just a small amount of data that can make a big difference. And I remember David was saying, no data, no data. I'm like, if you want me to continue to do this, we're going to have at least a little bit of data. I want to track whether or not people are accessing the ER,
Yeah.
911, their primary care physician, the crisis line, etc. And then we put a cost savings analysis with that. And so we used the language of cost savings for probably the first 5 years.
Okay.
And we were able to show the state of Oregon, how much that we were saving. By year 6, we were saving approximately $1.2 million per quarter,
Wow.
based off of the self-reporting that individuals were saying, I would have went to X. And And so eventually by that time they gave us permanent funding for that, and written in legislation. But we started using the language like, look, I don't want to call this cost savings because here we're saving $1.2 million per quarter, and now we're getting $500,000 a year. Well, let's reallocate the other $2.5 million or
Mhm.
4 point whatever million dollars that we're saving the state. Let's reallocate it into more peer services, or more services that are not more of the same,
Right,
right? That
right.
replicate
Mhm.
what we're doing, or something out of the box. And so I love that word, reallocation. We got to stop thinking like, let's save some money. We'll save the money when we utilize the service and expand the services that
That we
are
know work.
working,
Yeah.
That we know
right?
work, yeah. And it is interesting too, because this work of finding out where the success stories lie, and what path gets you to that point for
Mhm.
various people. This is the work of the community organizations, because all of the clinical evidence and the clinical guidelines are funding, most of them, I shouldn't say all of them, but they're looking to fund drugs. Okay,
Yeah.
drugs and procedures.
Yeah,
And so, and it's profit driven. It's
Yeah.
profit driven.
completely.
Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
so it's not about saving money. I'm not even sure it's about saving lives necessarily.
Mhm.
It's optics.
Mhm.
It's optics. It's
business.
what looks good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if
Absolutely.
Portugal said if we were to design a model that fails, we would design this model.
Oh boy.
Oof.
Yeah,
Ouch,
I was
Portugal.
like,
Ouch.
You take that
damn.
back, Portugal. You
That
take
was
that
on that
back.
TED Talk. If you wanted to design a model
Yeah.
that would fail,
Yeah.
you would design this
Well,
model.
yes. Well, I mean, we
Addiction
do.
Well, and
model.
can
We
we
not
start
just the.
looking at other models,
I
please?
know. Let's fix
Again,
it.
well, but it's the fear,
It's the
guys.
Yeah.
It's the
fear.
fear. It's the
Mhm.
fear. What would it look like to
Mhm.
radically change our perception
Mhm.
Yeah.
of the criminalization of drugs, for
Mhm.
instance?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, gosh, I don't know. We can't have that. I mean,
Right.
then these people are going to just go crazy with drugs. I mean,
Well, we could
Right.
regulate and get rid of the cartel.
Yeah, facts.
I mean, we're seeing that the drug problem has exploded.
Yeah.
The issues with substance use have exploded.
Mhm.
And so, yes, the time is now. I think for the first time in April 2021 and the 12 months preceding, we had over 100,000 people die of drug overdoses, 20% increase
Wow.
from the numbers we'd had over the last 5 years.
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
it's preventable.
Mhm.
It's
It is.
preventable, and that's the saddest part of it all.
Yeah.
100,000 mothers, fathers,
Yeah.
daughters,
Mhm.
sisters,
Mhm.
brothers.
Yep.
Mhm.
Missing someone.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I heard recently, I wish I knew the name of the place, but I heard of this place that is providing a safe space for people to inject their heroin.
Mhm.
And God, the people are just like, what the fuck? And like,
Yeah.
actually, no, because they're going to do it anyway. So why
Yeah.
not give them a safe space that they can
Mhm.
start building trust,
Yeah.
so that then they can start exploring. Even if they do want to stop, they've built a relationship with someone or some place that they feel
Yep.
safe to communicate those needs
Yes.
without
What a bold
judgment.
move. What a bold
Yeah.
move. And the
Huge.
evidence shows that it
It
works.
works.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes,
Totally.
it works.
Well, and
Go
you create
figure.
that safe space,
Mhm.
and then you bring in all these different holistic
Yeah.
alternatives,
Resources.
and they're gonna be
Mhm.
there anyways.
Mhm.
Maybe they try something new.
Right.
Mhm.
You
Maybe
know?
they do.
Yeah. Yeah. Is
Yeah.
today the day you want to meet with the provider?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
How you feeling? Yeah.
How
Or do you
about
need
your
housing
peer?
resources?
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah.
Establishing that trust and safety.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah. Critical.
That's the biggest link is, and I think about what you were just saying with the the profits that are be driven by, pharma and blah 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 medication stuff. Well, if you think about I'm pausing. I lost it. We were talking about the
Pharma.
Yeah, that's the biggest drug dealer on the planet, right? And I'm not anti-medication, right? I'm not anti-medication. I'm anti-first step medication, right? Like giving people an opportunity to have, a lot of other things explored before, if that is a possibility in that moment. Oh, the power structure. That's it. So let's take everybody who's working in behavioral health and addiction services. I think pretty much the most people who work in these systems come for a personal reason. It's not they're making a ton of money. They're not getting rich off this
Totally.
business, right? That being said, if they're driven there because they want to help, how do we get them the training and support that they, as people working in the system, need in order to create and move through the fear and create a place where they can actually be self-aware of their part and creating more of the same
And intentional.
and intentional about it, right? And because
It's a
otherwise they're falling into this burnout phase, they're
Yeah.
falling into this jaded mindset, and they're in this power over that they have some sort of information, and they are absolutely got the tools for you.
Well, the problem with this model is that if there's an outcome that is not satisfactory, it reflects poorly on
Yes.
the person who's working.
So they're
Yeah.
driving that
Well, and
care.
that power over is like
Right.
setting you up for failure.
Right. Yes.
Because we're independent human
it's a
beings.
no-win.
You
Yes.
know,
Just
so
let's
nobody
love each other
wants
through it, right?
Yeah, nobody wants to be bossed around. Nobody
No.
wants their power stripped away. And specifically for people with trauma, we have had our power stripped away and we know we don't like it.
Right.
And that's why we don't trust. That's why we go into, rooms cautious and,
Feeling
don't tell
unsafe.
the truth about everything because we're keeping ourselves safe. And so it's almost like a red flag for us when you get that person who starts to say things that seem a little bossy and you're going to do this and then you're going to do that. Our brain instantly goes to, you're not safe.
Right.
You're not respecting me. I don't like how you're talking to me right now. We bow out.
And people say, "Oh, but this is a safe space." No, you don't get to define what safety looks like. The individual it might be a brave space, a place where they can start practicing being brave, right? To speak up, tell their truth, their story. But then they get to decide what safety looks like. And if they say, actually, you sitting on my right side right now and you sitting on my left side right now, and that door is way over there, I don't feel safe right now because I feel boxed in. Well, hello, pay attention, ask people, where would you like to sit, rather than, oh, I got to sit here in the middle at the principal's chair, right? And the door is way over there.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't
Yeah,
ask
that's a very
those
good
kinds of
example.
questions.
That's a very good example. Yes, just that have something that happens every day, over and over
We
again.
got 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Well, I'm so excited to be working with you ladies on this project. And I like the idea of really trying to get this awareness, this trauma awareness into the mainstream, into the mainstream.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can I just say addiction or recovery? I'm going to quit saying that word addiction because I don't like it. I think it's more of an attraction or a survival skill. But it's not just substances.
No.
It's not just gambling. It's not just sex. It's not just food. It's
Or
also
shopping.
or shopping.
Yeah.
It can also present itself in behaviors.
Yeah.
A behavior like this can
Totally.
be a patterned way of being in the world. It can be control.
Just being a total control freak and having to,
or where's
having
this?
to do
Where's my
everything.
phone? Oh my
Yeah.
gosh! Right? Like like, oh snap! Where's I gotta have a TikTok? Whatever it is, behaviors is part of it. And guess what? Underlining all of that, look at the opportunity to heal through some trauma that might be linking you or connecting to you. Connecting to those behaviors. So.
Keeping you in that space.
Yeah.
Well, there's something about power, right, that keeps you there.
Yeah.
Right? Something about it is keeping you in that space, whether it makes you feel good or whether it makes you feel whatever. It's keeping you there for a reason. So us being able to assess ourselves and, come in an intentional way to connect with people and love people.
Love them through it.
Yeah.
I know we're going to wrap this up. If I can just say, Dr. King also, I don't remember you saying this one. Love is an action word. I heard you say that, but I didn't hear hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. And
Amen,
that's
sister.
huge.
Mhm.
Oh my God,
Yeah.
that makes my heart melt,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, it is. It is. It's the very essence of the
Mhm.
work that he was doing, I
Mhm.
think.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, I think I'm just going to say thank you for spending time with us. And please join us again next week when our topic will be. Do we remember?
Can we pause?
Our work is killing us.
Oh, our work is killing us. Finding wellness in the workplace. Thank you. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. High five.
Teamwork.
Okay, I'm going to say that
Teamwork.
again. Next week's topic will be work is killing us. Finding wellness in the workplace. Find us on all our platforms. Share and subscribe. We're on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, and all of the things. Are you aware?
Are you aware?
Are you aware?
Are you aware?
I think you're aware.
Getting there.
Yeah. Power of 3. We are aware. Thank you.